Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker from My Favorite Things, and I have a birthday card to share with you today. I'm using stamps from the Penguin Party stamp set, which I was so happy to see when it came out because I love penguins. Penguins are a big hit in my family. They are my husband's favorite animal and my father-in-law's favorite animal. My mother-in-law really likes them, and my daughter is starting to really like penguins too. So whenever I see a stamp set with penguins on it, I know I gotta have it because I'm gonna get a lot of use out of it. When I went to stamp these images, I wasn't exactly sure what the card was going to look like in the end. I just knew that I wanted to use this stamp set, so I picked a whole bunch of the images from the set, and I decided to just color them all, and then I would use the ones that I wanted to use when I came to actually laying out the card. In the end, I did only end up using the images with the penguins. I didn't use the cakes or the cupcakes or the table because it just felt a little too cluttered with all of those, so I kept it simple and just used the penguins. I think that if I were making a slimline card today, I could have fit all of the images really nicely, but I really felt like making a regular A2 size card today, so that's why I limited it to just the penguins. So I stamped all of these images with a Copic-friendly black ink onto some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock, and I'm coloring them with Copic markers. I'm not going to get too much into the coloring process today. I am leaving it in the video for the images that I actually end up using on the card so that you can see what I do and see the colors that I use. As always, I do have the marker caps off to the side in case you want to know the colors that I'm using. One thing that I did want to talk about with the coloring is how I did the blush on the cheeks for the penguins. Normally when I'm adding blush to my critters, I'm adding it to an already colored in critter. So I'm laying down the ink on top of more ink. So I have my critter and it's all colored in, and I usually use the R20 Copic marker and I add a little blush onto the cheek. And because I'm adding it onto ink, it kind of blends out a little bit on its own. But in this case with the penguins, because their cheeks are white and I didn't use any ink there, it didn't really blend out, and it kind of just looked like they had dots on their faces, which isn't necessarily wrong, but it's not the look that I was going for with these images. So in order to make the blush look a little bit more subtle and blended out, I ended up taking the Copic colorless blender and going over the top of it. And I just kept coloring over the top of that blush until it looked the way that I wanted it to look. Of course, if you own a really, really light rosy color Copic marker, you could get possibly the same effect, but I don't own that light of a rose color, so I did what I could with what I have. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was kind of an interesting technique. As for all of the other images, all of the party hats and the balloons and the banner, I decided to go with some rainbow colors, and then I cut all of the images out with the coordinating dies. Now I'm going to be creating a background to place these images on. I have an A2 size panel of white cardstock, and I'm using a blender brush to blend some Scattered Straw Distress Oxide ink up from the bottom. And the reason I decided to use the blender brush is because I wanted it to gradually fade out as I went up towards the top into white. And the blender brush just allows you to get that really nice soft look. I grabbed the Scattered Triangles background stamp and I put it in my MISTI, and I made sure to pop out that foam insert from the MISTI so that it has enough room for the background stamp, and I stamped that with a really, really light gray ink onto my background. Next, I took these little musical notes from the same stamp set as the penguins, and I stamped those with VersaFine Onyx Black, and I also took out a sentiment and I stamped that up in the top corner of the panel. I wanted to add a little bit more color to this and kind of have it pop a little bit, so I took my Worn Lipstick Distress Oxide ink and I just blended a touch of that at the bottom, and I think that really just changes the whole look. I trimmed the panel down to 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and then I popped it up with foam tape onto a Kraft card base. After playing around with different layouts, I figured out how I wanted the penguins to be on the card, and then I started to adhere them. Now these first two I used liquid adhesive to adhere, and the last two I popped up with foam tape so that I can create a little bit of dimension, and it really looks like those penguins are in the background. Now, I am a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to my cards, so I do realize that those penguins are not perfectly centered and it kind of bothers me, but I wasn't going to remake the whole card once they were adhered. I left them there because I didn't want to ruin the card, but if I were to remake something like this, I would try to place them more in the center. That's just me being really nitpicky though. I wanted to deepen up the contrast on my penguins and also give them a little bit of texture. So I grabbed my black Prismacolored pencil and I just added to the shadows on the penguins. I added these star sequins with some liquid adhesive. These are clear, but they have kind of a pearlescent sheen on them. When you look at them in different angles, they change color, and I thought that they were really cool on this card design. Next, I grabbed my white gel pen and I added highlights on all of my colored in images. Now, I don't really think about where I'm putting these. I'm not really thinking about a light source in all of this. I'm just kind of placing it wherever, and I think it looks good. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not making a art masterpiece here. I'm just making a fun card for somebody. Not that there's anything wrong with coloring really realistic highlights. I'm just saying if it's something you're not comfortable with, don't worry about it too much. Don't stress about it. Anyway, the last thing that I did to finish up this card was I took a glitter brush and I added a little bit of sparkle here and there, and then my card was all done. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you really enjoyed today's video and card design, and that it gave you some inspiration for your own cards. I hope that you have a wonderful day today, and I'll see you next time.